All right, it is 5:30, so I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that the attendance be recorded. Hopefully you all had the opportunity to review the agenda packets. I circulated the link over the weekend. If you haven't yet had a chance to do that, please review the agenda and then I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
I make a motion to approve.
Second motion.
Just making the mouse.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. Article 3, approval of the minutes of August 15, 2023. You may recall we didn't have a meeting last month, so try to think back to our meeting in August. Review the minutes if you haven't yet had the opportunity to do so, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Scott.
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments, conversations?
No, I thought they were good minutes. Thank you.
Great. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, moving on to Article 4. This is the point in our meeting where we like to acknowledge visitors and invite them to speak on any issues, either on the agenda or not on the agenda. We do try to limit comments to 5 minutes per speaker. Do you have any comments you'd like to make? Sorry to pick on you, but do we have anyone on Zoom? All right. And that's Danielle. So we'll be hearing from her in a little bit. I'm assuming you don't have public comments to make, Danielle? Okay. Moving on then to Article 5. I'm very pleased to welcome Jade Smith to the new role of Township Manager. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Very glad to have you. If you'd like to introduce yourself, or if you, I mean, we have, I think our name tags are in front of us, so you can probably pick out who's who, but why don't you give us a short little bio of yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Jade Smith, I just started 5 weeks ago with the township as the new township manager. I'm very happy to be here in Cascade. My wife and I have been looking forward to moving to the west side of the state for quite some time. I'm originally from the East Lansing area. Then I migrated down to the Metro Detroit area. I've worked there for the last 20 years of municipal government, mostly in Wayne County for 3 communities down there. Some large, some small. So I've got lots of experience. I most recently was with Canton Township. If anyone's familiar with IKEA, that's where it's home to IKEA, and about 100,000 people reside there. And then I was also with another community that had as low as 6,000 people. So I have quite a bit of knowledge in regards to various things that go on within both cities and townships. Very much looking forward to working with the DDA. I kind of have a passion for economic development and downtowns, both traditional downtowns and downtowns like Ford Road and Canton Township. So lots of things that we can do. I'm really looking forward to working collaboratively with you. And I know through the hiring process, through the supervisor and the board of trustees, I know that there's some big visions for the village area and the DDA. So lots of opportunities. I'm looking to dive right into those. So,
Glad to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Aboard.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any initial questions for Jade? Put him on the spot. We'll get him later. All right, very good. Moving on to Article 6, discussion and vote regarding holiday decorations. So we a little bit kind of oopsed and dropped the ball on this one. You may recall last year we sent out bids to have the trees and gazebo decorated in Tassel Park by a third-party company, so the buildings and grounds didn't need to do that. We did not go through that process this year, but my understanding is that the township was able to reach out to that vendor and they were able to provide an acceptable proposal, which was signed on behalf of the township. So is it the township's thought that the DDA should pay for the contract?
I believe that was the understanding.
Is that
Yes.
the understanding? That's kind of what I figured.
If we want Christmas, I think the DDA's got to pay for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Lord knows I'm not going to Grinch upon this.
Yeah.
Although you know how I feel about all the
Who wants to cancel Christmas?
Cancel Christmas. Yeah, exactly. I need that press. That's going to be great. The signed contract is in the packet. I mean, it's very similar, if not pretty identical to last year's arrangement. So if no one has any questions about it, or if you have no conversation about it, then I'll entertain a motion to approve. Go ahead.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I didn't see when are the lights being installed? When are they being taken down? What is this? What kind of time frame is this covering?
Right. I have the first answer to that and I'll look at Jessica for the follow-up. She's been doing a lot of the legwork and working with the vendor for us, but they will be up in time for the tree lighting ceremony. So they will be up by the weekend of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I'm assuming they'll probably go through the first of the year, but we will verify that. And if we don't know that tonight, I can send that back out to everybody.
Am I
Yes, sir.
making something up where I think last year we said there was one area of the township or DDA that was could use a little bit of more light?
So I couldn't remember
I
this.
can't remember, but I remember we paused on this.
There was a part that got skipped inadvertently, I think.
So a part in Tassel Park or a part of the snowflakes down
That's-
20?
I thought it was task.
I think it was Tassel because the
Yeah.
Snowflakes
Tassel.
Buildings and Grounds does the polls, so.
Okay,
If I may, and Jessica, I'm gonna look at you again. I believe that there were some options when they sent us this quote. And there were some extras that were included, and I believe that I told her to move forward with getting them to do them all.
Right.
The cost is $5,800. I thought that was well worth it in the downtown.
1,500?
No, 5,800
Oh, 50.
Yeah. total.
right.
Yeah. I
That
think-
should address it. But if we notice, I looked back through the minutes and couldn't find specifically where we were talking about. So let's try to make sure that the minutes reflect that we should make note if we notice a deficiency in the lighting.
We'll
at
take
Tassel
better
Park.
notes for next
Better
year.
notes for next time
Yeah,
because
because what I'm seeing on here, there's 4 birch trees being done. As part pavilion, bathroom, and museum gardens.
I don't know where you're seeing 4. I'm seeing 17.
17 trees?
Am I reading this wrong?
I'm seeing.
Oh, birch number 1. My bad. I see. This is why I'm not in charge of holiday
Usually
lights.
Birch trees are in a grouping.
7 light strands is what I think I'm reading
I see.
on this one tree.
I will say last year they did not go up very high, like 4 feet, but
One question I have, does this include like a damage waiver too? As far as if there's vandals or anything is damaged? Do we have to cover that or does the company, is that part of their bid?
So there's all kinds of legal language here that I'm just now really reading for the first time. And it should not surprise you to hear that it looks like they are saying they're not responsible for anything that happens as a result of third-party activities. So if some vandal goes and yanks on the lights and kills a tree, it would be very difficult to hold them liable, at least based on my 3.
Well, on the tree, but as far as the lights,
Oh.
I'm talking about their product.
Says the client shall be the refund of the relevant and partial product failure of the services provided under this agreement. It's in that. That's under limited warranty, though. I don't know if that has, and it says liability and remedies.
Right, I'd have to look at it
Okay,
more closely.
it's just a question I had.
Somewhere in there, it says that they'll come out and fix it if there are any problems with the lights. I don't remember how many times it was in the contract, but it was a certain number of times per week that they would replace any bulbs that were blown out or not working. And then this does include the additional that was added on to the contract last year, later in the year, after it was noticed that some areas didn't have as much lighting.
Okay. All right, other questions? Comments? All
Thank
right,
you.
would anyone like to make a motion to have the DDA cover the cost of this service?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed contract.
Second.
Friendly amendment to the motion because the contract's already been signed.
Oh, approve the financing of it? How do I word it?
Accept it, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, to
Payment
pay,
for it.
to pay for it?
Pay for it. Do you accept that in your second?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Wow. Abstentions? All right, very good. Let the lights commence. Moving on then to Article 7, discussion regarding status of median visibility in Centennial Park. So I added this to the agenda because you may recall that last year, when the snow started to fall, the medians became invisible and people started driving over them. So happens that I I drive back through there quite often and I noticed that the stakes aren't there like they said they would be. It's possible that they just haven't done it yet.
Mm.
But I know the road commission was out there looking at it at the beginning of the year and it doesn't look like anything's moved forward. So I just wanted to touch base to make sure that something was going to happen.
Our parks, we had the discussion today at our Parks Committee meeting and our Parks Director said, Jade, maybe you guys are already. The road commission technically is supposed to do it,
Yeah.
but because we've already invested in plantings, if it doesn't happen in, I can't remember, a couple weeks, then we're just gonna do it.
Okay. As long as it gets done before the snow starts to fall so that people don't tear out their transmission. That's
Right.
just fine. And I think that the complaint, for some context for you, Jade, there were a couple of stakes in a couple of the median islands, but not all of them. And it is absolutely impossible to see that the medians are even there when the snow falls because of the
Right.
way that they plow it, they just plow each side. So
Yep, we will take care of that. for
thank
sure.
you very much. Other questions, comments? All right, moving on. Article 8, update regarding Hope Network Transportation. How's it going?
So we met with Scott. I've been introduced to Scott. Grace and I had a meeting with him. He gave us some ridership numbers. I've requested from Hope Network that they give us an update every week on the ridership numbers, so we have an ongoing tally. For the beginning, and I do apologize, this particular form I'm looking for is sitting on my desk at the office. But we did have an update for the first, I believe, 4 or 5 weeks of the program, and there was a total of 80 riders for the entire time. There was on probably average 3 riders per section or on a daily basis, like the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. They are contemplating getting rid of the evening, and Grace, correct me if I'm wrong, I named that's getting rid of the evening route because they're seeing very few riderships on that.
Almost none, like
Yeah.
less than 3.
And you can tell by the times that they're recording when people are getting on the bus and the location that it's the same riders
Right.
probably every day. So we tried to back into the individual riders and we think we came up with about 80, but there's no science behind that. But
Right.
we're pretty certain that that's about what it was for that entire 4-week period.
Steve?
With that information that you've collected, do we know, are most of them going to the Meyer hub? Are they going to the Costco hub? There's 5 stops that they're making.
Yeah.
Do we know where most of these riders?
What's the
get on and
flagpole?
off?
Meyer, Goodwill, and Walmart.
Well,
But
yes.
was it 80 or was it 80 total? But then it was the same with the Rapid. They got 1 on, 1 off. So it would have been
Yes, yeah,
40-ish.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. So do we know how, and Danielle, I'm gonna test your memory here, how this stacks up against the ridership information we had with the Rapid?
We actually get it.
From what I recall, I believe it was around 25,000 a year, was it, I believe it was, and then they double count, so I think per person it would be like half of that. And then if I recall, the peak was around 2 or 3 PM, I think is what our data had.
Which is interesting because the data that I believe Hope Network sent, their peak is in the morning. That 7 o'clock pickup time at the flagpoles.
Right.
I believe I can't remember where the flagpoles are at. I know
By
they're
the-
west, but those were the most highly used times, which was 7 o'clock.
And Danielle, were we able to separate that line? I guess kind of, because it was a new route. Remember that it used to travel down 28th Street, but then it stopped and it was a new route starting at the mall, that 25,000 number. Was that all just in Cascade Township?
I think that was all of Route 29. From what I remember.
Okay.
All right, well, so
Yeah, that, and it was just, I was curious. I'm not gonna
I
hold
should
you.
know this because I looked at that. I couldn't even tell you how many times I got through that data.
Numbers are not one of those things that I retain, so I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No.
I mean, it's interesting to me because I feel like in the meetings that we had with public and the engagement we got, there was this cry that they needed a lot more. And so the fact that there isn't the throughput, I'm not sure
Meyer-
how to interpret that.
Meyer was at that meeting saying,
125.
yes, and there's a handful, but it's nowhere near that. Cascade Engineering, do you remember that woman? Someone from them, which
But
they're
aren't
not.
they out on
Yes,
36?
but
Okay.
she was there at
Right.
the township meeting, and then we asked Scott from the Hope Network, and because that sounds like a good potential partner, right? Especially if you're not stuck on 28th Street necessarily. And then he said, yeah, we tried to work with them, and they wanted 100% of the cost to go to the employee. So it's like, even then,
Right.
they came to the meeting, but there was no.
So is the township continuing to get contacts from other riders who feel that they don't have options? I know that we at some of our prior meetings have had people from the, now I'm gonna forget the name of the facility. The retirement community.
Gaylord House?
Gaylord House, thank you.
Yeah, so before I started, I watched that meeting. I know that they were at a couple of the board meetings. And then since I've been here, knock on wood, I have actually received 0 calls and
Okay.
0 inquiries from any sort of ridership, either for or against what's happening.
I see no news as good news because they've been given the options and there's a lot of information that I feel that was pushed out that they may not have had before, so.
Mhm. After we switched, officially started with the Hope Network, I believe there's one, everything went quiet, except there's one gentleman who has called in publicly to a couple board meetings, 2 or 3 maybe.
Okay.
Other than that, though, once the transition happened, it's been crickets.
Okay.
And I don't believe that he was.
What?
Sorry.
When he called in, complaining about the service that we changed?
Yeah,
or-
not liking the change.
Yeah, I
What
don't-
aspect of the change that, anything in particular? Like,
No,
didn't like the
he-
timing, you didn't like the, the physical bus change?
Just general that, Jade, correct me if I'm wrong, general that there, and actually Clerk Slater, you're there too, that fellow that has called in a couple times. I think it was more just like, the ridership was there and.
yeah, I don't think it was so much about Hope Network. I
Okay.
think and I'm not even sure that he was a Cascade resident.
No, he
It was just about just the transportation option going away.
Mhm,
Got it.
So.
And nothing from the YMCA,
mm-mm.
you were
No.
concerned?
They were. All right, well, this DDA is funding through the end of the year, so I guess we'll need to talk next month about, for purposes of budgeting, whether there's gonna be any tweaks. It may be a little soon to determine that, but we'll need to be able to come up with a figure for purposes of going forward, so.
And I think that's gonna be interesting to try to figure out, at that meeting, will 2 or 3 months worth of data be able to?
I don't see
Focus
how,
on
it's such a
this
small subset, but I mean, it'll be enough to spitball, but I don't see how we can predict with reliability based on such a fraction of ridership. I mean, we may need to look at a combined data set of what we're getting from Hope Network, and although flawed and outdated, some of the records that we got from
Should be the
the
business
rapid
quarter.
should be, but
I mean, we're going into
Pre-holiday.
the busy
right.
holiday season with seasonal workers and everything else. So we've got some learning to do.
The problem is that we have to have our budget figured out before the holiday season shopping, so. I mean, we can, and we can always do a budget amendment, so I
Yeah.
don't want to get too twisted into this. but-
It's
And we are allowing shoppers, not just riders.
We
or
are.
Not just workers.
We are allowing.
I did not
anybody
realize
at
that.
this point, anybody. can- it's
So
anybody that
what's-
wants to get on the bus can get on the bus.
Yes, and everyone's welcome as long as they pay.
So what's the process? Do they just show up at the stop and is there a scan, or do they have to pay? Like, how's
Oh,
the process
The
work?
details of what they do when they get on the bus, unfortunately, I don't know.
Okay.
But I do know that they pay when they get on the bus. We actually had one rider that actually prepaid. Her name, that's the only name that we actually have, is because she started an account with them. But I think she's also one of those that we saw every day, and she was one that used it to get to work.
I
Great,
think
that's
she
the-
called,
that's
yeah,
what
and I
we're doing
think
this
she works at the deli at Meyer.
Yes, I
think.
believe so.
If I may, from what I recall on Hope Network, they said the driver has like an iPad with them and they are able to like tally and calculate who does what, and if somebody has an account, they'll have names and lists from employers of the names of people that are expected to ride and stuff like that. I think that's how they keep track of it all.
Interesting. All right.
One of the things I would recommend is maybe reaching out to Gaylord House and find out how transportation is working there. This is a low income group.
You volunteer?
No, I think there's been a lot of communication and I'm
Okay.
I'm satisfied with it. I know exactly, like, they're not
Okay,
How to get in touch.
okay,
There's one woman there in particular, but she's been very clear about what she wants and
This is
it's not in this, no, you're not gonna get round the clock, weekends, evenings, public transportation, drive up to your house. It's not gonna happen. But you can have it during the working day, 5 days a week. Got it. But so I think
sure.
there's no lack
But-
of communication. It's just that we can't give them what they want right now.
okay.
She's very vocal. She's been on Nextdoor. She wrote me a handwritten note. I thought it was a thank you card and it is just a list of, I mean, no lack of communication.
Again, I guess I'll go back to the beginning of the conversation. I'm just having I don't want to say a hard time. Believing that none of these businesses have called to say, hey, this is really
Yeah.
again, during that meeting. So many people said this is going to be detrimental to my business, and we kind of thought that too.
Well, even the survey pointed to it as
Yeah.
well. I mean, the engagement at meetings and with the survey pointed to it was going to be a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Yes.
And reality is
Yeah.
changed.
I can say, I think and maybe we should have Scott maybe attend our next DDA meeting. I can ask him to join us next month. But I do know like Meyer, for instance, they did have some employees that transferred to another location. So they made accommodations within their own business structure to take care of those employees. So maybe that just took care of itself. I don't know. But that's just one feedback, I don't know, we got back from him.
Good solution.
It would be helpful to have Scott at our next meeting, particularly if we're gonna be trying to,
Make a decision.
make a decision about funding levels and.
And
how
all
we
the,
might
all the
tweak program.
data, because it's very easy to, it's real straightforward, all the stops, all the times. That would be like at our next meeting, so you can kind of start to,
And you might give him that heads up that we're gonna be asking him questions about that and, what kind of proposals he might have about tweaking the program. Like, for example, if there is a thought of getting rid of an evening shift because of lack of ridership, then that would be good information for us to have when we make that decision about funding. Okay. Other questions, comments, items about Hope Network Transportation? All right, moving on, Article 9, 2024 budget. So this is just kind of a preliminary conversation because we're not going to be working through any numbers, but Michelle brought up the very good point that, in the past, we've had a budget and we've just kind of, we didn't really have projects in mind as we were coming up with the budget. And that's a little bit different now that we have the strategic plan in place so that we can make decisions about our budget that are closely aligned with the projects that we're planning on doing.
And the priorities.
And can you share what else the implementation committee discussed to this end?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talked about in line with that, and having sort of a set process and timing of that process every year to prepare for preparing the budget was that in making the decisions on and weighing what projects we really sort of where the priorities are based on what falls in line with the strategic plan. So those things that are high on the, ranking in the strategic plan is kind of, if I think about in the for-profit world, you basically budget for the things that are gonna bring back the best revenue. So obviously we don't run the business of the township that way, but since we do have the strategic plan and it does outline what the priorities are, that we say, okay, that's where the priority of the funding should be as well.
Which makes very good sense. Yes.
So at one of the recent board meetings, the Tuffy building came up again.
Oh, right.
And if I remember correctly, I don't know, I don't recall what the end solution or the end decision was with that in the sense of somebody else wanted to come in and run a business through there. But I also, I think in that meeting, it was stated that the DDA then would just potentially buy that building or whatever the case may be. And I know that that's kind of in our plan.
do you want an update?
Please.
Can we do it, Jade? Can we say it? It's nothing's
Let's-
final.
Yeah,
Do we need to
I
go into
think-
closed session or?
No,
Okay,
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
okay.
We just can't go into the specifics, but I think we can go into the concept.
So nothing's finalized yet, but the but the plan is there's a tentative agreement that we will buy the Tuffy out, the lease out, early termination. And it could happen quite quickly, and it would be with other funding sources, not the DDA. And
Oh,
So it
but
would not involve the DDA at all?
it could down the road when you talk about, what we're gonna do with it, but as
Got
far
it.
as early termination of the lease, no, the funds are coming from somewhere else. And hopefully it should be, I don't want to start
okay.
being optimistic, but
stay
it should
general.
be done deal.
Because
looking
I
pretty
believe
good.
that there's portions of the whole property
100%.
that was with the DDA
Mhm.
in some funding. So if
Yes,
it was
and we
either
would-
the acquisition of the building in the sense of purchasing them early, as you just pointed out, and or the development of whatever was gonna happen there.
So from a timing perspective, in needing to move and finding funding sources, early termination buyout, not the cost of the DDA, but certainly, looking at what happens with that property could be definitely.
Because I think that will be a determination too, as we're putting this budget together.
Yes.
When we've given, I think it was $1 million for the library, for the park there. And
We have a good update on that too.
fantastic, and I see that he's here to share some more, but yeah, just where our current monies are gonna be going as new things are happening quicker than we thought.
100%.
Perfect. And I'm guessing that we'll have more information next month.
Yeah, can I talk about the budget process just
No, yes,
frequently?
please.
Rob, real
Please.
quickly? Okay, to your point, yes, a timeline needs to be established for the annual budget. The supervisor and the clerk both know that I'm very big on a timeline with the budget, not just the DDAs, but the townships as a whole. So we will have a much more proactive approach to the budget moving forward. We are already behind schedule in getting the 2024 budget. My plan for the budget was to put together, there's a couple items that we are going to discuss later on that will affect the budget. But my plan is to have a preliminary budget sent out to you all via email before the next meeting, because we need to have the township's budget approved by the only meeting in December. That's cutting it really close because that's December 13th. So my goal is to have it approved at the November 20, nope, that's Thanksgiving, 15th meeting at the board, which is not going to coincide with yours, but we may have to come back and just do an amendment, like you said, in regards to that, because the timing is off this year. But I have proactively put together some things in the budget for the DDA keeping in mind the Tuffy building, keeping in mind the whole village concept and the strategic plan and getting that stuff running. So I will definitely be looking for dollars and priorities from the DDA to put that budget together so we can get it to you as expediently as possible. You should have already had it. I should have been presenting that budget to you tonight at the October meeting to take back to the board. Well, it could even be September or October, so that it can be incorporated into the township's budget, because the DDA has to approve their budget before the township actually approves the overall funding for the
Right.
township. So unfortunately, it's just not happening that way this year with the timing of me starting, and we will get that back on track.
So do we need to contemplate scheduling a special meeting to get this back on track?
I might entertain it if you are okay with that, because I really want to have some deep dives. As I said when I introduced myself, I'm really into economic development and DDA, and I've got some pretty big ideas to run by you all to hopefully that you'll support them. And so that could be incorporated into that budget, because of course, everything takes money.
I
But
think the only thing that would prevent that would be, scheduling. But I think that we all recognize that it's an important thing, and I just don't know how we would accomplish it without, keeping in mind the Open Meetings Act. I mean, I don't know that we can really email back and
Right.
forth about
Yep.
it. We would, it seems like scheduling a special meeting is probably the way to go.
Yep.
So I'm gonna let you lead that, that effort of scheduling the meeting so that,
Yep.
you can be sure that you have everything you need
Yeah.
before we.
yeah, I didn't want to imply that we're going to violate the Open Meetings Act. It was
No,
just, any priorities that you have. I mean, this is the first interactions we've had. So anything you have that you want to see considered or included in that budget, let me know, and I can, definitely add it in there. And then when we get together, we can have those open discussions and dialogue.
And I know that there were, I hate to have to go back through old minutes. There were a number of things that we voted to fund in the
Yes.
past year that will carry forward. has that been communicated to you or do you need kind of a?
I think I
list?
have them.
Okay.
They weren't recorded, so I think they're actually recorded now. I think the big ones were if I can just run them by you real quick.
Please.
The pedestrian crossing over the river.
Yep.
And then there was, I believe, $1.5 million going to the library for the Friendship Park. I think that was it.
Those are the biggies. I
Those
mean,
are the big
the
ones.
transportation amount was a
Oh, yeah.
not insignificant amount. And so I assume that will also be something. you
Yep.
know,
That will be a discussion item to talk about that
Right.
transportation piece. Mhm.
Did we approve 1.5 for the?
Yes.
I thought it was one,
I
but
thought
I
it
could
was
be
one.
wrong.
I thought it was one.
I thought it was one, but I don't.
It
remember.
was one at the DDA because it was the other portion of it from the
Right.
township board.
Right.
Oh,
The
I'm
friends,
sorry.
the friend,
I'm
that's
sorry.
all right.
Yes. Yep.
1.77.
Dang it, Wes, we got a little,
Not 1.77, 1,077,000.
Oh, okay, got it.
Oh, okay.
that makes sense.
Down to like.
In regards to the DDA though.
We're gonna need that.
I'll have to go back and do some more research because in regards to the DDA, I show some capital outlay of 1.75 million. But I know there was more than two projects. So maybe it was 1,500,000 for the pedestrian overpass. And then I thought there was more. I'll go back and look at the,
Lights.
There was the community foundation as well.
no,
Yeah, that
this was the
small. That was
DDA.
like $30,000. I mean, yeah, there's dribs and drabs. There's not another, $1 million project. But.
Yeah, I
mean,
will go
there's
back
all
and
this-
get this detailed.
Okay.
Because Jessica's been a godsend going back through meeting minutes and helping me put this together because it was not recorded at the time that it was actually amended in 2023 at one of your meetings. So
Okay.
that needs to be corrected, which.
I don't know that it was amended in 2023 is the thing.
Um,
I think that because of the staffing gap,
We had a
it
transition.
kept getting
Yeah, well,
kicked. And
it
so
all-
we never had the amendment placed in front of us for approval, which is why you can't find it.
You did approve it.
We did
You,
approve
you
it?
did approve it,
Yes, we did.
in April.
But nothing, so nothing was like.
But when I say amended, I kind of meant bookkeeping on back
Oh, got it,
power
got it.
into the
Okay.
system, but you did approve it.
Okay. You have a quizzical look. Do you have something to add? No, I'm pointing at Scott.
No, I'm just thinking through the budget of things that we've agreed to. And I
Right.
know if you think of the pedestrian bridge, we agreed to fund one side and
Right.
the township, the path, Friends of the Pathway or what have you, the township
Mm-hmm.
was gonna do the other side. So I'm just trying to make sure we're capturing everything.
Am I,
correct.
am I remembering too far back with the lights, like the
Which-
lighting project, the
streetlights?
bulb street lights?
But so it needs to be done. It's an ongoing,
Did we not approve that?
I don't think we formally approved anything.
I thought.
I thought we
My
did.
understanding is
thought we
very
did.
much
They were
we
gonna
did.
Did we?
reach out
Yeah.
all of the.
With it for
streetlights.
LED.
Oh,
But what I
sorry,
can't
I'm
remember
thinking-
is if it was 2023
I
or
was thinking of
2022.
redoing
But the
Centennial
project
Park.
got delayed to
Yes.
execute. And so it was gonna hit our budget. We approved it, I think even going back to 2022. And it got delayed just because of getting scheduled to get executed.
Did we ever get it done?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I
Not
don't.
based on the blinking lights.
No.
You know what?
Well,
That's, so it will come up. It'll come up because that's one that hearing a lot about and Parks Director is handling like the whole light situation. Centennial Park was the one that huge malfunctioning with those and there was like a $77,000 price tag to redo the stuff that shouldn't even need it yet.
That's one to check into then,
So-
because I think we did vote.
It won't get dropped is all I'm saying.
Okay.
It won't slip through the cracks because
But they were two separate things. They were two
Yes.
Yes.
separate projects. Yeah.
I don't remember how much that was. Do you guys remember?
And
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
it was a lot. It was not insubstantial.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember they came back, said the price was going up and we
Right.
approved it up to a certain amount was my understanding.
Oh, small thing on the pedestrian bridge, and maybe we talked about this. Sorry if it's a repeat. So DDA, it was initially 500,000 estimated, right? And then DDA said that, pending the design, everything, but 250 to cover half of it. I think then as we haven't seen anything yet to approve or design wise, but as we talk about streetscape and lighting and like decorative railing to really go on both sides and then maximizing the width that we can squeeze that the road control allow. I guess it was a mistake early on by staff. Anyways, we had 500,000 is probably going to be township funds, 250 DDA, but that extra cost we're just assuming to really make it look nice, it's kind of like an entry into the.
We just talked about as far as the railings,
Okay,
because they're all gonna have to be
and there's no drawing it for
specially
it?
made.
Right.
No, I thought there was.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Oh,
but those were like, yes, but nothing like
In here.
more final, that includes like lighting and landscape.
yeah, I know.
No.
It's all-
But our amount hasn't changed.
No.
It's still 250. So.
So I
as long
probably
as we
shouldn't
have that
even
line
digress,
in the
it's an unnecessary rabbit hole.
And then there was a bunch of
Yeah.
little.
There's-
things
Yeah,
that we had
right.
for,
Flower pots?
Flower pot, well, yeah, flower pots, Metro Cruise,
Yeah,
you know.
the Christmas lighting.
Yeah.
yes.
Helps fund some of that.
We're gonna talk in the other section about whether we're gonna do something for Small Business Saturday. Not that I remember what we've done in the past, but, right, I don't know, but yeah.
And then there's
Um,
the way, the other thing that was always our overhead, and this is up to you, Jade, if it makes sense to continue it, but they would say like a certain portion from build, for maintenance and staffing and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
The DDA, yeah, that's been in the past budget for the
Yep.
DDA.
Yeah, and I have a new formula for that this year that's more standard across
Okay.
all funds.
So if anyone thinks of any other projects that we've forgotten, or if someone has some spare time and wants to go back through minutes, email Jade and let him know what those projects might be, so we can get that up.
Yeah, and I will send you all an update too, because I did just find the 2 meeting minutes. It was 1 million for the library, or the library, and then a 500,000 for the bridge. So there's still 250,000 that is somewhat unaccounted
I'm
for.
guessing that's the lights. It's gotta be. the
But I also
lights,
show
right?
another line item for 230. that I think-
Centennial Park. It might not say specific, well, right? Wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but they were 2 separate projects. And the Centennial Park project was pricey because of it had to be a large portion of the fixture
Mhm.
that was replaced, not just the thing that is a problem, it seems,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I mean, we talked about, did we go back to the manufacturer because it seemed like it could be a warranty issue? And maybe that was resolved. I
Yeah,
don't know.
there's 2 issues with the lights in Centennial Park. One, we have resolved with a different type of bulb. I've been working with Melanie. The other one, the manufacturer is actually out of business and they no longer make the light. So
Ah,
what we're doing is we're looking at another lighting company that's gonna retro a light for to look, but to come in and look just like the rest of them.
Yeah.
So she's working on that now.
Okay. All right. Other items for us to do prior to this next meeting that we'll have to discuss the 2024 budget?
I don't
Nothing
think
from us
so.
in the meantime? Okay.
I'll try and get my ducks in a row.
Get on that. Any other questions, conversations, things you may have missed? All right, moving on. Article 10, DDA and Village Concept Project, Danielle. I
Oh.
think that this is this
This is me.
you, I'm
Well,
sorry.
it can be
I thought
us.
it was gonna be both of you.
Yeah, it can be us. So, I think, yeah, because I think DD implementation tools is what's down below that.
Oh,
we
my
talked
mistake,
about.
my mistake.
So this is me. When I hired in, obviously I was told a lot about the village and the DDA and that there was this concept to do something and to tie it in, make it look more like a village. And in my past, at all 3 communities I've been pretty successful with bringing in an outside consultant that has looked at and come up with concepts for the village. And why I think that's really important to do is because it gives you really something to start to pick apart, as opposed to sitting in a meeting every month and going, well, should we do this or should we do this or should we do that? And then, but if you bring someone in and you have some stakeholder meetings and you do some visioning sessions with him, and then he walks away and he comes back with a concept that ties everything from 96 on the west side and takes it all the way into transition down the DDA into the village. And then what it can actually look like and turn it into whatever the desire is. And I go into that saying I don't have any preconceived ideas. But it's been pretty successful, pretty proven to bring somebody in like that to do that kind of work for us. So I wanted to bring it up at this meeting because I think it's a really good opportunity for the DDA coming up on the 2024 budget to allocate some funding for that exercise. And I've sat down and I talked with Danielle and we had a long conversation in regards to what they have done and then the idea that I'm bringing to the table and how the two can complement each other. So it's not that McKenna can't or won't or isn't desired to do that, but if we come up with a concept or a vision for this, then we may have to go back and rewrite some zoning. We may have to go back and rewrite something, you know, within our own ordinances that will allow us to do what we want to do in the village, because it is going to take on a unique character of its own. So depending on how serious we are about moving that forward, I really think that now with the acquisition of the Tuffy and that going to be in our possession, we really want, if we're going to own that, we need to get something done to that as opposed to just sitting there like an abandoned business.
Oh my, yeah.
So I am proposing, and I don't have a dollar amount figured into this yet, but I wanted to just kind of put feelers out there. So if, when we talk about the budget for 2024, what is the feeling of the members in regards to bringing somebody in that could do this concept? And maybe I'll go a little deeper about what the concept would look like. Like I said, he'll do the look and the feel. They can do fly throughs where it's kind of, they'll use their imagination. They'll fly you like down 28th Street into the village, over and around the river, by the old doctor's office, what Tuffy could look like. And this would be, you know, the inspiration that they get from a meeting with everybody here and taking back that information and then putting like pen to paper. And then we get to go back and implement it and actually have some hard plans to move it forward. And I just wanted to pitch that to everybody and see what everybody's thoughts were. And if it's something anyone's interested in, then proceed. If not, then we can have further discussion or not do it.
Steve?
I guess I first want to get clarification on the definition of what your village is. Because you described it from 96 down 28th Street to Cascade. And in my mind, I think my perception was all the time that we ever talked about the village, it was down Cascade 28th Street.
Yeah, I was just, when I was referring bound by the 96, I'm talking about the whole district, meaning the DDA district. In that you want to have some continuity and some transition from when you get off of highway services down 28th towards when you get towards the village. So I'm on the same page with you as where the village is at 28th and Cascade.
Because
in
that's
old
what
28.
seemed to be the priority for the,
Yep.
for the community was that area first. So and I agree with what you're talking about as far as having a vision from the highway to get to our quaint community. Do we have to, so to speak, wait to get that entire piece done from one end to the other as compared to what the community is saying? Let's start working on the village aspect of things.
Yeah.
And potentially utilizing the work that McKenna has already done. And if that's kind of the starting point and work from that direction backward.
No, I probably should have said it the other way, from the village to the highway. You can do it in either
Okay.
direction you want, but I
I
think
just want to
that,
make sure I'm on the same page. as
yes,
what we're talking
yeah,
about.
no, and we would phase that in because you were not going to take, no, I mean,
Right.
you're not going to take on all of that within, 1 year or even a couple of years. So
Right.
you could start anywhere you wanted to, but phase one could definitely would be the village. But you still want that continuity to define what Cascade is. And we had a long conversation at the planning commission meeting last night with the planning commission members about you don't want to look like the community to your west, and you don't want to look like the community to your east. So how do you define Cascade? And that really does start not only in the village, but it also goes all the way to 96. And there's things you can do. And if any of you, I don't want to rehash our meeting last night, but if you've ever been to Canton, it's a very busy community, but they've defined themselves right off the highway all the way to the west end. So that's kind of what I was referring to. But yes, definitely the village is priority. For sure.
And this, I actually like the idea of getting kind of that broad vision in place before we start picking out little projects or little ideas. And it lends itself to what Scott's brought up before. I mean, when you're planning something, you're starting from, that place of having the vision, and then all the decisions that you make, you're looking to be consistent with what that vision is. And this seems.
And I think we've got whatever the master plan is for Cascade too, like everything has to sync up. And also there's been I don't want to say a lot of investment, but there's been some investment making sure that we're leveraging some of the work that's already been done. And there's some good parts to it. The world keeps changing, right? So some things look dated. But I think there's some good elements, but I think if we start with what we have, and I think starting at 30,000 feet and seeing how all the pieces come together is a great idea.
Yeah.
Cause there's a big thing of, we can like it, but the community, we're doing this for the community and the community has to be able to visualize it and buy into it.
But if the question is, do we want to contemplate including the cost of the visioning in the DDA budget for next year? I mean, we'll obviously take this up at the meeting where we discuss the budget, but I mean, I think that, yeah, tee it up, and I'm not hearing a dissenting viewpoint suggesting that that isn't something that we'd want to consider looking at.
I think also would be helpful is, I mean, just this, it sounds awesome, but if you have an example of it, I think it will come to life.
Yep, I will actually send you something prior to the meeting to show you.
Yeah.
So, and again, Danielle and I, we have talked and there's. I know I came in with these ideas because this is what was talked to during the process, and this is just what I know. And so we'll still continue to work together for implementation, because this is kind of a snapshot where they'll put something together and then, we get to put it, implement it. So we'll have consultants working on this for probably many years, including the planning department.
When you send us a snapshot, could you send us before and after pictures? What things looked like prior, and then this is what it developed into.
Yes, yep, and I'll.
Just
And some of
gives
it's
us a
still in
better
pro-
perspective of what they can do.
Yeah, and some of it's still in progress too, and a lot of it is going to be where they may come up with the concept and the design, and then it falls back on the funding mechanism and the community itself to implement. So they may have the best idea in the world, and we're like, yeah, that's great, but what does it look like today? Well, the community didn't follow through. So I'll definitely send some ideas and some examples out.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
It's all exciting stuff.
It is.
Mhm.
All right, moving on then to Article 11, brief updates. All right, Danielle, sorry for jumping the gun, but now DDA implementation tools and case studies.
Yeah,
Welcome.
so this is kind of related to what Jade was just going over. And also to note too that we have been in communication, excuse me, sorry. So the township has copies of like our current contracts of everything that we've got going on. And then I've also sent Jade additional materials of work that we've done thus far. So we've been kind of working to see how all these pieces fit together, and we're here to just help where we're asked. So that's kind of how things have been, how our relationship has kind of unfolded over the last few years with the township. So if you guys recall, there was an amendment to our contract with our work with regard to the DDA strategic plan. If you recall, we eliminated the section of the contract that was related, or a scope of work that was related to the Upper Village area, because that's kind of already panned itself out over time. So we decided to kind of shift into assisting with implementation, financial implementation options and ideas to kind of just get the ball rolling and how this all fits with all of the other things that you guys have going on, as well as the Thornapple Center redevelopment project and those conversations that have occurred with those property owners. So I put together a memorandum with some research that I did on a multitude of DDAs across the state and what types of tools and programs that other DDAs use, how much money they allocate towards those tools, and how those programs essentially work. So some of these are cities, some of them are townships, some of them are villages, but just kind of keep in mind that these strategies are all relatively similar to one another, but it's going to ultimately end up being how much money the DDA would be interested in investing any of these types of strategies. So the first strategy I put together is a facade improvement grant. This is very common, as you guys I'm sure are well aware of, and how this program typically works. But essentially what happens is that a developer or property owner would upgrade the facade of their building, and then the DDA would then have a budgeted amount for folks to reimburse folks for the work, whether if it be up to a dollar amount or a certain percentage of the type of work up to a certain dollar amount. So that's just a very effective tool that many DDAs have used across the state, and it's a very common program. I would say probably one of the most popular that I've seen, and that's why there's like several examples of how these facade improvement grant programs work. Typically, it also involves an application process. So the property owner or developer, whoever the applicant may be would submit an application to the DDA and to you folks, and they would talk about what they want to do and how they want it to look. And then you guys would have that conversation of if you want to approve that application or not. And then, of course, how that all relates to zoning constraints and all of those things, which all effectively tie into the master plan, which, so there's a lot of important projects that are kind of all happening at the same time. I won't go into every detail of these examples unless if you guys want me to. But I would say the key thing to note here is that it does appear that facade improvement programs, grant programs are a little bit less of a excuse me, I'm just recovering from, I was at Disney World with my daughter like 2 weeks ago and ended up getting COVID when I came home. So I'm still kind of like got like some leftover congestion. So I apologize. I've been in quarantine and masking for 2 weeks. So just to note that the facade improvement grant programs typically aren't going to be more your high dollar sign type of program. These are going to be more so windows and building materials and so forth. So just kind of note that. It looks like the city of Lansing, well, actually the city of Petoskey has a relatively high budget compared to the other ones at $50,000 that they have budgeted annually for the program. I should also note too that the city of Lansing, which I thought was a very interesting mechanism that they have set up, is they have almost like several different tiers of grants that they're willing to dole out. So the first of which is the lowest tier, which is a design engineering grant, which I'll get into in a minute. And then there's like a B tier, which is a facade improvement grant. And then there's like a C tier where it's the most grueling application process and a lot of information and decision-making needs to go into it. But there's a lot more money that can be filtered into that. And that's like a total renovation, transformation grant program that they have. So kind of interesting to note that that was something that I noted that was a bit unusual in most of the research that I did in other communities and how their grant programs function. But honestly, I thought it was, it seemed to be very successful, and I thought it was a great way to start those conversations with private property owners of, higher dollar amounts and more financial incentives, which will have in return more return back to the township and into the DDA. Strategy number 2, site improvements program. So the DDA can utilize funding or through grants or gifts for different placemaking improvements, sidewalks and bike paths, utilities and infrastructure. So if the DDA wanted to, I don't know, perhaps filter funding in by burying power lines or something like that, so they're not overhead power lines in your village district, the DDA can utilize funding to do things like that. And of course, you guys utilize funding for placemaking all the time with benches and trash cans and flowers and all of those types of things. So again, you're well aware of how this type of program works. So some examples of other DDAs in Michigan that have site improvement programs. City of Centerline, they'll award up to 50% with a maximum of $5,000 for general landscaping improvements. This includes the cost for rehabilitation. It includes the cost of the actual plants themselves. So it can kind of be within the parameters that you guys set of what you would be interested in your money, like what portions of a project you would be interested in funding. Lathrop Village also has a site improvement program grant with reimbursement of 50% of the total project cost up to $10,000. And then they also have a separate fund for parking lot enhancements or improvements, landscaping, other site improvements with a maximum award of $2,500. So again, you can kind of right size the amount of money that you would award a property owner or developer or just whoever the applicant may be for improvements, kind of depending on what the project is and what parts of it you'd be interested in reimbursing for. Strategy number 3, property acquisition. Again, this is something very common that many DDAs utilize, but you could, the DDA is well within your means as long as it aligns with all of your TIF plans and your development plans and all of those plans that all work together, that the DDA is well within your means to purchase any property within your boundary and then subsequently sell it to a private property owner for a type of development that is agreed upon, as long as the zoning and all of that is appropriate. Or the DDA could own property and you could turn it into a small pocket park or, whatever you want to do with that. So again, that's another mechanism available if you guys were to be interested in a particular piece of property that may be going up for sale, or any interest in conversations or negotiations with property owners to sell any property to you within the development area. Strategy number 4, design engineering grants. This functions very much like placemaking grants and facade grants that you can utilize DDA funds to assist with the financial mechanisms to design, engineer different types of improvement projects or rehabilitation projects or redevelopment projects within the DDA boundary. These awards are typically a lot lower in costs or in award amount, just given the fact that design engineering typically isn't that as expensive as an entire site redevelopment would be, of course. Strategy number 5, development and redevelopment grant programs. So this was the one that I was only able to find one example of this in the state. Perhaps there are others, but I just didn't uncover it. But Van Buren Township does include or offer an award up to $75,000 per development. So essentially how this works is that it tends to be broader than a facade and site improvement grant, in that the DDA could set aside budget for a competitive grant process. Perhaps maybe you only award one per year or something like that. And property owners can submit for financial assistance for redevelopment activities. The grant program is intended to offer financial solutions to assist with infill development or developing otherwise challenging sites. Perhaps there might be some topography issues or wetland issues or something like that that the DDA would be interested in kind of working around with property owners. Site challenges can include poor drainage, lack of utilities, limited accessibility. So perhaps DDA funding or grant award could go toward, upgrade of infrastructure or something like that. So this one is kind of a broader umbrella, but from the example that I was able to find, it had a bit of a higher dollar sign for that grant award, but it is a much more competitive process because there's typically only a very small amount that are awarded, unless you guys could choose to award up to 3 or 5 and have a $50,000 cap. So, it really depends on,
Could you, just thinking of certain where we want to focus, location wise, are we allowed to give, to make the location and willingness of put that as a high, give that more weight than other factors? Say we've got, someone, Walmart wants to do it, could put the same out, but then we've got a business owner over by where we want the village to be. You know what I mean? I'm just wondering how much wiggle room there is.
Yep. So that would be well within the DDA's means of decision-making criteria for who, let's say you get 10 applicants that really are going after this redevelopment award. And so the DDA has the ability to establish decision-making criteria as through the establishment of the program to say, this is how we're going to weigh out the importance of projects by utilizing this type of criteria.
And could the criteria be such things as that would fall above, but they're normally lesser dollar amounts, like facade improvements under a certain, in location, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would have to look into specific criteria that other communities have used as models, but I would
I guess legally what we're allowed to do.
Yeah, I would venture to say that if there is a particular project that meets the DDA's highest priorities and more immediate goals more than another project, you would be within your means to establish that as a criteria mechanism for decision making.
And the strategic plans on in alignment with the
Mhm.
overall strategic plan.
Exactly. Yeah. So there will be situations where, like, for example, in the conversations with the property owners that own Thornapple Center, that might be a higher priority to issue funding for redevelopment than it would be for, I don't know, a new facade or an updated facade on one of the hotels or something like that. Just as an example.
Yeah, we could use like their crime rate. to Rule out the hotel. Yeah. We'll have to figure out, we'll have to be
Now.
So it's all, the great part is that like the DDA and you folks have such an incredible capability for implementation to like really see on the ground things that are happening, which is great, but it's just kind of a matter of sussing out what's the dollar amount we want to associate with this and what types of programs are we interested in establishing. And the last strategy that I had noted of through my research in different DDAs around the state is the sign improvement grant program. So again, this is the DDA offering grants for folks and business owners and whoever to update their signage for perhaps something that's more compliant with ordinance standards or something that is better than what they've got currently. So those grant awards through the examples that I found, again, tend to be a little bit more on the lower amount side because it's not going to be a huge ticket item that it would be that expensive to update a sign. So I guess from this point, this memorandum was largely in part to be informational, to just kind of get food for thought and wheels turning on the types of programs and incentives that you guys can offer. And this does come really timely with conversations that have been occurring with private property owners that are really interested in redevelopment right now, but they're just waiting for what's that dollar amount going to be. So that's kind of that's kind of where everything sits right now in this process is first, which programs is the DDA or are the DDA interested in establishing, if any of these strategies that have been laid out in this memo, and then what that dollar amount looks like and how that translates like timing wise. And perhaps that's a funding for the visioning session, like Jade had mentioned too, that, you know, how all of these pieces fit together. But I think that at this point, it's just kind of important to continue getting the ball rolling on and having these conversations because there are folks who are extremely interested in working with you to implement whatever the vision ends up being. I think that at this point, it's kind of like in your hands a little bit to start mowing over on what you would be interested in doing. Yeah.
A quick question. So, not all that familiar with those, but say a business wants to submit an application for a facade improvement.
Mhm.
So we actually approve that.
Mhm.
And so if their idea of a facade improvement is different than ours, so we can just say that that doesn't adhere to what we're looking at for that particular, we can say no for those reasons, or
Mhm.
because their idea of a improvement might not be what we were thinking.
So some of it has to do with zoning, right? And then some of it has to do with the DDA's vision for like the better, best type of thing. So as Jade alluded to previously in this meeting, that there have been conversations to figure out what those architectural standards might end up being within the DDA area, which then translates to the master plan, which then translates to a zoning ordinance update. So that those base architectural standards will end up kind of being your better scenario. So then a developer or property owner could approach the DDA and say, this is what we want to do. This matches your new zoning criteria. And the DDA can then say, well, we like what the architectural standards here for this better scenario that is actually codified in law. And then let's take that to the best scenario and how we can work together and how the DDA can utilize funding to fund or implement a shared goal.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the Architectural Review Committee, I hope you have good taste because you're on it. That's kind of what we're gonna be doing.
Okay, that's right.
So I've got a couple questions. Is there, first of all, is there something like this in place anywhere else within the township that we know of, whether it's through
The grants.
or any kind of?
No, I was
grants?
gonna ask if you guys had done it in anything like this in the past.
Not that I recall.
For any of the boards for
No,
Cascade Township?
this would
nothing?
only be, this would be the only
Okay.
place.
My second question was, when you were doing that research,
Mhm.
what portion of, some of them I saw had limits that, all right, X amount is set aside for the total amount, meaning, let's say there's 10 applicants, but there's only 50,000 total in the pot. Then you kind of dole that out. Others didn't have like specific definitions, but up to 50% of the total project. I'm assuming those somewhere have stop loss, like, all right, up to this much that we can fund. My question is, what portion of those funds is there any research to show what percentage were used up on any given years? Did they run? How did they use most of them? Did they spur?
So, oh, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up to that, but I'll let you answer that first.
Okay, so from what I've been able to glean from what I was researching, as well as experience from other colleagues, that some communities use up all of their facade improvement grant program funding and some don't use any. So for example, the DDA could allocate through your budgeting process, let's say, for simplicity's sake, $100,000.
Sure.
And you say, we're gonna budget $100,000 for 2024 for facade improvement programs. We'll get all these applications in. And a property owner might say, well, our engineer that we're working with estimates this total cost to be $30K for the work. So then you guys could say, oh, well, the DDA will fund 50% of that, up to $100,000. So if that money doesn't all get utilized, from what I understand, I believe you can carry it on to the next year, or you can budget a set amount per year. It just kind of depends on how often that program is being utilized and how many applications you're getting in.
My follow-up, sorry,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
just one quick follow-up to that would be, and this is more from a personal standpoint, like, there's similar things done, because I sit on a board for a small business retailers organization too, so there's always like small things like that for infrastructural improvement for within the stores, whether they're point of sale system that report needs of data back to the state, or other improvements that help the state run our industry a little bit more effectively. And I find a lot of times when there is a big pot, like a $75,000 price that, let's say 400 retailers are competing for, but it's only one person is able to get it. What we find is that generally it's corporations that win those because they have very vetted processes and are able to make that claim a little bit better. But then what you find is that, and this is just more for internal conversation, it's interesting because you have 400 people apply for that, right? One person got it. Now the other 399 have no motivation to actually do anything. So you got engagement, but you only got one piece of property that saw an improvement versus other things where you have, hey, we'll cover up to 50%, or we'll cover this, we'll cover that. It gives more businesses an opportunity to actually implement immediate change versus just one big pot per year where you're just doing one property at a time. So just something to think about.
It's a really good point. Yes, and then we'll move down.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So as you're talking about this, as Rishi is talking about this, there are ways to implement to be proactive in implementing these things. So in other words, as we go through the planning process and we have a better idea of what the vision is for these areas, that we can say these areas are where we're going to target a plan like this, because we really want those properties to be updated, changed, evolved, whatever. So I think we can be proactive and target some of these things versus just saying we have this program and whoever wants to use it, can apply to it, but that we actually approach the property owners in that targeted area.
Steve?
My comment was gonna be, as a business owner, We have what we call the step and curse. I would go out and make these improvements now, and then 6 months down the road, this opportunity is like, hey, if you made the improvements that Steve just made, we would help fund. So one of the things just to think about, and again, would be to take maybe say within the last 24 month or last 12 months, also those individuals that made improvements on their own because they wanted to do it to grow their business and do the right thing, would also be allowed to be part of these grants. Even though they've already spent that money and it was the previous year. Just so, I don't know, just from I don't want to say a penalization aspect of things, but you know, they're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And we got those monies, and if they fit the criteria for what they did without knowing what that criteria was, they got lucky. I don't think they should be penalized either.
So I think you'll have a lot within the Cascade DDA that'll take, I mean, this is, if it's the first time that we're doing this, I think you'll probably have a lot of interest in people that are maybe on the verge of revitalizing their storefronts or offices or things like that. So I think you will get a lot of, I hope we'll get a lot of feedback from that. Does it make sense to make like a subcommittee or something that kind of focuses on fine tuning?
Architect, before we go into this, like,
Yeah.
this is all tied.
We're not there.
We're not there.
We're not
but
there.
It is, but on the architectural review committee and the standards, it's not gonna be like, it's gonna be specific to go with a specific, you know, look that this, we're not there yet, but it's all
Love the
good stuff.
idea of a subcommittee, but
gonna
we
take
have
something like that.
visioning, and then we have architecture and zoning, and then, and you know, that subcommittee can kind of start simultaneous with some of that work, but I don't think it.
We're not
I
there.
mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we need the visioning before we can even really make any progress forward. with
I
these
think,
things.
yes and no. I think it's never too early to start planning for that process. Is I think once you decide what you want and we go through adopting, and some of it may already be in our zoning. We may already be okay with some of the language that's in there, and we'd have to dive deep into that and see, you know, is the signing in the village requirements, is it the way that we want it? Are we really going to be messing with that? Well, let's kick off the sign, you know, grant or program. So I think, I personally think it's worthwhile for Danielle and Chris to continue working on this and putting something together that would be unique for Cascade. Because all of the communities that are on here are all very different. You know, downtown Lansing is very different than Cascade Township. Downtown Wayne is very different than Cascade. So I think we could start to actually put some of the qualifications, maybe some of the zoning comes last, but you can start to, the hardest part is always figuring out the subcommittee and who you're going to score what, right? That's where your neighbor gets scored a 0 and this guy gets scored a 10 and you're going to give him. That's where it gets ugly after the plan is already in place. So I think continuing to work on the plan, I would be for it, if it were up to me. So that's just my 2 cents. So I don't think we would want to stop, because I still go back to, and Grace has heard me say this so many times, like now that we're going to have that Tuffy building, we need to hit the ground running. 2024 is going to be a really big year, I think, for the DDA. And I think this momentum needs to continue. And if we have any sort of process to put some framework together and then fill it in, I think that's something that we should continue.
I don't think we should stop at all. It's gonna be real specific, and the more we have a process, remember, was it Mike from the architect from McKenna came up with the facade drawings they were very like, it's that kind of stuff, specifics that we don't understand necessarily, but
Yeah.
like.
In our
setbacks,
Your recommended
lighting.
next step.
My next step would be to continue, because I think when we do the concept's going to be based upon what we want. And when I say we, that's collectively the community, you as members, the board, some other stakeholders that we may bring in. Like, so it's going to be whatever we want to do. So I think if I keep saying when they do that concept's going to take all that into consideration, whether it's all brick or whether you want hardy wood or you want signs that protrude off the building this size. I mean, it's all going to be about a look and a feel, and they're going to do exactly what we want. So I don't know if either of you disagree, but I don't know why we would stop not putting something like this together.
Yeah, so we have, I mean, from at least our previous conversations, like we as McKenna have an idea of where aesthetically this will probably go. But I think at this point, like from what if I'm hearing correctly, is perhaps the next step is to actually take these types of strategies and right size it to Cascade Township DDA and then get a reaction from you guys on what you think about that. So we could say, we recommend that the DDA, the Cascade DDA, consider these 4 strategies and roughly this amount of money allocated towards each of these 4 strategies. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, whatever it ends up being. Does that sound?
That's
What
exactly what
exactly
I'm saying. And I think we can use some, we can meet internally too, to look at what are some of the activities that we've had from a permitting process. How many sign permits come in? How many facade improvements do we see that come in? So we can actually back into some of the data to say, what's the demand in Cascade? What are business owners actually doing to kind of framework where we want to go?
So do you see the need for a subcommittee to help with those determinations, or is the place for that later on when we're fleshing out the criteria for applications for?
I
these
think
grants?
it's more that, but I
Okay.
definitely.
That's my
definitely-
thought, but I
yeah,
just
Yeah.
later on.
And just a quick comment on this, just a couple of reactions to some comments. Historically, I've seen these done and I see more your small businesses, mom and pop businesses taking advantage of these. I've not been involved in some of the ones where you have infrastructure work and things like that. But those are the ones that I actually see take the most advantage of this, because they're the ones that are really, it's sale to sale for them. It's week to week for them. And this is where you really see your bang for your buck. And then once you see 1 or 2 start doing it, all of a sudden it just takes off.
Those are the businesses that need it too. Walmart, Costco, they don't need it.
Now, when you talk about a conceptual plan from the village out to the highway, how long does something like this take to come to a fruition? Because, we talk about, okay, if we're gonna get Tuffy, we need to do something now, but at the same time, I want this to fit in to the grand plan. Let's not do something there and then all of a sudden the conceptual plan is totally different.
Right. Yeah, I would never recommend doing anything with Tuffy until the concept was done and then we had
And
something.
how long does something like that take?
So where I just came from, we just went through this process and from start to finish, it took about 8 to 10 months. They were still working on some like tweaks of the concept, but you had the bulk of it done probably within the first couple meetings. And then what it did is it brought back before a committee like this, that would say, yeah, we don't really like that look. We don't want this to be here. We wanted to change up some of the, especially some of the public placemaking type of things that would happen in a district. Those are the ones you want to play with. So at the worst case scenario, but I think the other thing with this concept, again, even after we pass it and say, yeah, we're moving forward with that, it's still a concept because you have to have the developers, you have to have the funding, you got to have the private landowners that are going to say, yeah, I'll do that to my property. You can't force anybody to do it, but then you can actually say, here's our concept for the village.
I don't want it to take that long because it's taken I think we're closer than what we think, because 2 years we have everything we need now. It's just figuring out the money.
Or with all of it?
I mean, all of it with, we still need to get it. We don't have the concepts, but we have everything we need internally. It's just a matter of.
And a lot of it depends on too, how.
It's the strategic plan. We spent over a year doing the strategic plan. We have pounded the pavement. So this is just getting people that can actually do it.
And however interactive the participants and the stakeholders are too, and they're all on the same page. That was our conflict where I just came from. You had some that were over here and you had some that were over here. And then you had to bring everybody around the table and say, okay, where's the happy medium? Or we're just going to omit that from the concept. So.
And as the supervisor, I'm sitting here listening and knowing like all that's been going on. We're not going to do another strategic plan. And we is not, this is just, we've got it. We're going to get there a lot.
Yeah, I think that the fact that there are already folks at the table that are just waiting for the button to say go, then that within itself, so for example, if the DDA decides that you are interested in implementing like a site improvement program, with those folks that have already been engaged in this process, that the DDA, it might be quicker for implementation for the DDA to select like the low hanging fruit for that implementation. So sidewalks, perhaps like within the Thornapple Center development. Perhaps the DDA could purchase an outlot or something like that and make that a public space with a gazebo and benches. So there are things that the DDA can do in more of a shorter term type of implementation that does make a big difference. But I think like as Jade just alluded to, and Grace, that all of the work that has already been done during the strategic plan, at least we know that everybody has the same goal and the highest priority is the same thing. And it's just kind of at this point, like sussing out like what are the small minute details of how to get there.
So does your current statement of work encompass this next step of the project, or do we need to talk through expanding that?
So with the contract money reorganization that we did a couple months ago, I'll have to double check exactly how I worded it, but I do believe it falls within our current scope of assisting with whatever that implementation program will be.
Okay, if it does not, then let's get that on an agenda for future approval. But let's first confirm that there aren't additional questions.
One comment I do have in looking at strategy number 2 is I think there's a lot of things going on, especially with the ARPA money that is out there, and things have to be executed within a certain time frame. And for instance, I sit on another board, we met today, and there's an initiative to link all the bike paths across all of Grand Rapids, and then it syncs up with the 2.0 plan. And so Cascade is likely a big part of that. We have the library, the growth here, and making sure, do we have the paths to get people there? Are we utilizing that great project with the bike pathways to the best of our ability, and what the vision is we have? And I'm just mentioning 2 things. There are some other inputs, especially with this much money out there that is so time bound to be used. How are we going to leverage a lot of these great things going on that makes it flows in with what our plans are?
That's what we're doing. So the Tuffy, 350,000, the amount we anticipate that would be ARPA funding because of that availability, deadline, and priorities. Same with the bridge, 500,000 from the pedestrian bridge, Thornapple River, ARPA funds, and then the ARPA fund, big chunk for the fire station. And then there's still a few, but there's no shortage of.
But this is an example of just Cascade, and there's some other projects that will benefit Cascade that are being major projects that are being done and that will play into our major vision. And so when I look at those things, like we may be a great hub for bicyclists, and are we providing the right pathways to link up other businesses and for people to engage with our community if this becomes a main artery? And so I just want to make sure we're not missing. We're like horses with blinders on. We're just focused on our world. And we just met with Experience Grand Rapids, and they're looking at, it looks like they opened the door a little bit for us to connect and partner with them. Do we have a full vision of what's going on just right outside of maybe the township that could benefit us?
I don't think we used to, but we do now. And that's what staff is for, and the board of trustees, and 100%. We had a pathways committee meeting last week where we had the guy from the e-bike store. And yes, fully.
Thinking like the Kent County Parks Foundation, that's the one who's doing the initiative to connect it's going to be a $30 million project.
Yeah, we've met with a couple people from the Parks Department on their bike. Yes. So
I just want to make sure we're syncing up right with those things.
We need to
And
keep the broad
that
view.
comes into the plan of, hey, in strategy number 2, because of that, are we syncing everything up and it's working with our plans?
So I don't think we're in a place where we really need to take a vote, but are we all aligned at taking this next step with getting more specific suggestions relative to these grants?
Yes.
If I may ask, before I take this back to get more specific, is there anything about these strategies, like, is there a strategy outlined here that you guys are not interested in, that you don't think would be anything that you would like to pursue?
I think they're all great, but I think for a couple to make a really big impact, we're gonna have to go beyond these or figure out a way to do certain places are gonna need more funding.
Agree.
And I
But this
think-
is great for.
I think once we have a vision, here are all the levers to execute the vision to get us to where we need to be, and it's going to be a phased plan.
Agreed.
And if anyone knows any wealthy benefactors, or people who are looking to place make in Cascade Township, we're more than happy to partner with them. The right place.
I'll keep
that
my ear to the
economic
ground.
All right, very good.
Oh, and the community foundation as well. I think,
Yes,
would
that's
be a great
another one.
partner.
And we just, yep. Because they may not have the funds, but they've got the connections.
That is right. We've got smaller funds, but
We're gonna tap into that.
talk about that in a minute. Under other. All right, thank you. And
Thank you.
plan on next month, unless something goes awry, maybe giving us an update if that fits within your timetable. If it does not, just let me know.
Yep, absolutely. I'll keep in touch with staff and
Please.
they'll work with you guys as usual. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Danielle.
All right, moving on to Article 11, brief updates. All right, DDA implementation tools and case studies. Just did that.
You just did that.
Got it. Sorry. Joint meeting. So this one's me. Many moons ago, we used to have periodic meetings amongst all of the different boards and commissions to kind of get together and align, for lack of a better word. We haven't done that in the last couple years, and so I've been keeping it on the agenda as a reminder that it's something that people have expressed an interest in doing. So add it to your list of things to plan, please,
Sure.
once you get settled.
Yep.
Library project. Do we have an update about the library project that you would like to share?
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Lulu Brown, Regional Manager for the Cascade and Caledonia Libraries. So there's been, I guess, quite a few things that have happened in the last couple of months. One of the big important things for me just with this project was to make sure that it kind of outlived myself, and with your contribution or your pledge to donate to the project, I realized it was bigger than me. It needed to become a park. While working with Melanie, who's the Parks and Recreation Director, it has become a park. So the township formally adopted it as Friendship Park. Sort of next steps, what that looks like, you'll probably see Melanie a lot more than me, because now it kind of goes outside of my expertise. It was just something that I really wanted to make sure that we had a space for our residents to gather. And even now driving back in, you can see how many cars are in Noto's parking lot and how many people are gathering over there. And wouldn't that be amazing if they had a great park to go to after? With that, I'm going to turn it over to Wes to provide some general updates of just kind of what's been cooking, but I'm really excited because we're finally at the finish line where we're going to be digging dirt soon.
Evening, everyone. Wes Landon with Native Edge. Nice to see you all again. Yeah, like Lulu said, a lot has happened since we met last. And after we got, approval for the funding for the project, which has just been amazing to see where it's gone. So I'll just give a really brief update on the major points, then feel free to ask any questions that you have. The core design is complete, and it went out to bid. It's a little bit different than the last rendered plan that you had seen, but not in any significant way. The functionality of the site's the same, little adjusted path here, there, materials and things like that. But generally it's the same plan that you have seen before. So no major updates there, other than it's been all detailed out in construction format and put out to bid to landscape contractors, which we just did the last couple of weeks. And at the township meeting, we selected Harder & Warner to be the landscape contractor for the project. Just met with them this morning to review a lot of the details. It was a very productive meeting, and excited to have them on board and ready to get started, like Lulu mentioned, right away, as soon as their contract goes through the proper channels and gets formally finalized. I say the core design is complete because there's a portion of the project, the pavilion and just immediately adjacent areas that's still in development. And the reason for that is originally we were showing, when we showed some of the pavilion concepts, some prefab structures that you might see more commonly throughout different municipalities and parks and things like that. And when we were working on it, the group just really thought, let's do something a little bit more unique. So we hired an architect to come up with a design for the pavilion, something that was more integrated into the site and reflected the design and connected well with the library and the improvements of the grounds. And so that is in progress right now. And it was a very interesting process because there's, you want a pavilion, there's about 150,000 different ways you could look at that. But the architect has been really great and flexible with us and giving us different options to consider. And the design that we have landed on that's in kind of moving into the construction document phase is a circular pavilion where it's mimics a lot of the shapes happening in the plaza area, and it's got a flat roof, which is likely going to be a green roof. And I say likely because we're looking into that process and making sure it works with loads and all that fun type of stuff. But I have very high hopes, and if I were to bet, I'd say that's the way that it goes. And the pavilion roof is angled a little bit, so it's going to function extremely well for everyday use, for small gatherings and things like that. But it's also going to have that feeling of a presentation space that opens up to that north field. So it's going to function very well for events if there's a performer, speaker, something like that. So we went through a lot of iterations and a lot of different styles with the group, and a lot of input about what this feature is going to be. And really, primarily, it's going to function for the everyday use of people that are just going there to visit with a small group, or maybe there's I don't know, a knitting club pops to mind because I just saw my mom, she was talking about going to her knitting club, things like that. But those everyday uses, but also we'll say we've got the 4th of July events going on, and it's also going to function extremely well for that and feel very flexible as a space. So that's in process of development right now. And when that is all finished, we'll put that out to bid for builders and things like that. So the schedule, like I mentioned, we're going through some final crossing our T's, dotting our I's, getting the contracts in place. I know we need to confirm with the township before we start actually digging, but we're looking at likely Harder & Warner being able to start in mid-November. To start doing a lot of the pre-work, a lot of the clearing and grading and some stonework and things like that. Then in the spring, they'd get started on, wherever they left off this winter, when at some point they won't be able to do any more work. In the spring, they'll be able to finish up that prep work. We'll start pouring concrete. And the idea is that hopefully the pavilion design will also be buttoned up about mid-November, along with the other associated details. We'll get bids, and then that can coincide directly with the rest of the construction project, with the goal of being done by mid-June of next year. So that's what we're working with right now. And I can say too that when it comes to the budget, we're looking great. We're right, within our budget. We're right within our budget or very close, and we've got other funding sources, and we've got some other grant funding recently, so we know we have wiggle room. But Harder & Warner's bid came in right where we were hoping it would. We've got a lot of flexibility with the budget, so we're looking great in that regard to be able to do all the things that we want to do. And overall, things are in a great place, and we're really took a big step by getting Harder & Warner on board and looking forward to construction. So
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, one question with the pavilion, is there going to be a little storage area for incidentals and things like that?
So Melanie, the new parks director, actually said that she didn't think that would be necessary at that location. She said because I know we talked about storage last time and having water and things like that. She said specifically to some of those questions about having water hookups, that they have electric power washers or I don't know exactly what she has, but she said it's mobile in some regard where they don't need water right there. And she was the one who specifically said we don't need storage there. She'd rather have it be more about just a pavilion space for, rentals, uses and things like that. And personally, I also think if you're going to have storage there, we'd need that back wall. And I personally think it functions a lot better being open because it prevents blind spots and things like that, and just adds to the safety and things like that in space. So that's why that aspect of the design, the storage aspect got moved. Yeah.
Other questions?
Just, is there going to be a sign that's going to go up to kind of get excitement around it? Because there's going to be a lot of activity, something that's facing 28th Street, to say something exciting's coming
Soon, Friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would.
Good idea.
Yeah. Grace
We're
and
gonna put
Melanie,
it
and I
on
know.
Website and
Yeah, I think
social
when
media, but we didn't actually get a
we've
sign.
got some renderings that I think we can put up, one of those big coming to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we'll do something like that for sure.
because I think you sell it to the community.
Yep.
The community will look forward to it, and they'll understand why the space everyone's a nosy neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Helps
Yeah.
them kind of visualize how great it's gonna be.
They can't claim surprise next
Exactly.
year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right, thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing the progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks
great
for
night.
coming. Good night.
All right, planting project. So I have to confess, I have not checked in with our landscape planters. Have you, and Renee's not here and she was kind of,
I saw they changed them.
Yeah, I saw them,
But yeah, they changed them for fall.
do we have a report on how that's going or that's probably not on your radar?
But
Like,
unfortunately,
planners, I don't know anything about a planner.
unfortunately, that is not on my radar right now,
It's not
but it will be.
Is Melanie getting, last time we talked, I thought Melanie was getting involved in.
I know
With the
she is.
planters?
I just don't have any details.
Oh, that's fine.
But I do know that she's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And honestly, this is a carryover from the prior month, so we can just say, let's just check in to make sure that if you notice something awry with the planners.
I drove by it pretty fast, but it looked great.
It was a full blur or an empty blur?
It looked,
It was a
I
full blur?
noticed it was updated.
Okay,
It looked
there-
nice.
that's-
Changed them a couple weeks ago and they look good. They reused some of the things that were in the pots already and added new for the fall season and.
Perfect.
they
Do we
look
have
good.
Christmas? So we have Christmas covered too?
Yeah,
Or I should say
seasons.
holiday covered
Holiday.
and then
Seasons, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, and those, I mean, those will stay through the winter until spring.
Yes. Cool. All right, Cascade Road Bridge pedestrian bridge.
stay tuned, should be soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I can give a quick update from Eric. I know he's made some good progress with the road commission. I believe at one, maybe I'm saying something you guys already know, but I know at one point the pedestrian bridge was only, or path was going to be on one side of the bridge. And he's been able to work with the commission that it's going to be on both sides now. So we're gonna have a lot more flexibility with pedestrian traffic there.
So the last time we talked about this, they were updating drawings.
Mhm.
So that at some point we could see what that was gonna look like.
Have
Is
those
that
been updated?
still-
I have not seen them yet, but I will inquire and I will make sure this stays on the agenda for next month and bring those then.
And the pathway committee themselves had gone, a couple of people had gone back to the road commission to first, those initial drawings were more like structural, like engineering size, specifics like that. Not the way I would look at it, like the fluffy stuff, you know.
I think we were also wanting to get a good view of the width because some changes, you know, the width of the lanes and the
Yes.
pathways.
I'll make sure that we bring a full, both architectural, engineered drawings and then also what, you know, aesthetically what it would look like.
Perfect.
And are they looking at it starting next year to do it?
Yes.
Mhm.
I know we talked about
After school,
timing
so.
of it, seeing if we can influence the summer,
Right.
the summer timeframe of them doing the construction versus when school's in session, when it kind of clogs up the area even more.
Common sense would dictate, but,
I don't know if it's even within our realm of control.
oh, it is absolutely not, I wouldn't say in
Yeah.
our realm of control, but we can hope.
Correct.
We'll nod and say yep, and then.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. Other comments or questions regarding the pedestrian bridge? All right, Parks and Pathways update. Is there an additional Parks and Pathways update
Toughy, but we
There
kind
you
of
go.
covered it.
in Friendship Park? Master plan amendments, any update regarding that? In progress? Yes.
Just say that, yeah, we've been continuing our work with McKenna and the Planning Commission on bringing the master plan kind of in line with the strategic plan. And as part of that, looking at different areas of the township, concerns of density and uses and height and things like that. So we had a really productive meeting just last night with the Planning Commission, or kind of use it as a work session. So McKenna's going to do some updates on that plan. That's probably something we could share with this group. Maybe give another update at November of some of the things the Planning Commission's focusing on really those uses and densities and focused areas of the township.
Great. Any questions? Other master plan updates? Thornapple Plaza redevelopment. Probably no real update to provide yet. There hasn't been any further conversation with the property owners.
There was, Jade met with them and
Is this I'm not familiar with the play.
the
Is that?
cow,
Oh, yeah. So we did meet with them.
Plaza.
To Danielle's point, they're anxiously awaiting our facade of all of our grant opportunities. They very much are wanting to stay engaged in willing to do some maybe public-private partnerships. So out of this conceptual process we go through, it could incorporate some things into their parking lot from pedestrian, walkways, pathways, gazebos, whatever kind of public spaces we want. They were open to all of that as well. So it was a good conversation. But other than that, I think they're kind of at a standstill until we kind of make a decision which direction we're going.
Sounds good. Let's keep them on the agenda. Hopefully we'll move forward quickly. Oh my, 6869 Cascade Road update.
That's the toughie.
Oh,
Kind of
got
very
it.
comforted, but that's, I just put the address because at some point we gotta, we don't want to talk about
Small.
toughie anymore, right? We want to talk about something
Right.
else.
I don't know. We called it Prevost Plaza for
Oh.
years after Prevost closed, so.
So I think we gave that update.
All right, RAP grant.
Yeah, I probably should have put this up there with the library project update because I know Wes and Lulu and Melanie worked hard on applying for the grant of $500,000 towards that project. The Right Place actually submitted $9.9 million worth of applications. They received 6.7, so they went back and reduced everybody's grant ask, but we did walk away with $450,000 towards that project. So yeah, so
Wonderful.
yeah, we were actually just, because they came to us and asked us what, if we had to scale back our project, what could we live with? And we were discussing, and then they made the decision for us. And I think we ended up okay, because I think we were gonna give them a different number.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so, and we did find out that there is a round 2 coming in 2024. The pot's gonna be much, much smaller, so it's probably gonna be much more competitive, but with the momentum that we have going on in the village area, I think we could have something that could be really cool to apply for and get some
That's
additional
great.
funds. So
Wonderful. All right, any questions about that? All right, moving on to Article 12, other business. I received an email from communications for the township asking if we were doing anything for Small Business Saturday. And I don't recall that we really done anything for Small Business Saturday other than those business spotlight type videos that may have happened to coincide. But I didn't want to make an assumption about us doing nothing, so figured I'd better bring it up.
Spotlight videos is the only thing I can think of,
Okay,
but that was kind of year round.
it was.
We
All
should
right.
start brainstorming fun little.
yeah,
They're
so I brought this up to Rich, so that's probably why he reached out, because we were putting together the newsletter and we talk about, Black Friday and things like that. But again, those small businesses that make up a lot of like their village businesses and things like that really need to be celebrated on that Saturday. So just keeping it at the forefront of our residents when we send out the communications that Small Business Saturday is Saturday, and then we'll think of some other fun things to do to kind of do some highlights and promotions.
Am I hallucinating, or did Sandra once in the past do like not a scavenger hunt, but like a little like stamp thing where you had to go to a business and you get, yeah, the passport, am I
It's
making this?
executed by a local business that's no more.
Okay,
And they were the genesis of that, and they had the blessing of the DDA, not with funds, but this is a
Okay.
great idea and connected people.
okay, so you want to recycle that.
But we
Okay,
can put it in the newsletter, can't we, about, to hype it a little bit?
Yep.
for
one with, and it sounds like they're already on that.
Yes, we are. I think he was reaching out just to see if you had more information, but yeah, that we're planning on including that and hyping that up a
And
little
I
bit.
think the DDA invested a couple dollars in some radio spots, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
There might have been it was a small investment of like $2,000 on local radio to talk about, it was like Sweetest Day or it was small business, whatever, but there was some involvement with.
You may be right. I don't remember it, but it kind of sounds like something that,
our website too. I know that they've been working hard on it, but right now there was kind of like a defunct. It was before me, the district or something. It was kind of inactive, but Jessica has been figuring out, Jessica and then our communications specialist will have to do a lot more and different, like for local businesses, that kind of stuff.
that would be
It's a
great.
small amount,
Getting
but
that in
but
line.
Something
Yeah.
was supported financially.
Okay,
Like Rockford did a Where's Waldo or something. Well, there's lots of different.
well, we can,
We can dork.
I mean, we're not going to come up with anything here at this meeting, but so I guess the answer to Rich is we don't have anything planned.
Yep, yep.
Thank
But
you for bringing
at
it
least the
back.
plant to see, because then we have some things we can do for next year, because
Right,
it's
exactly.
getting late in the season, but we can still do some promos and get some things out there.
Precisely. The other item I had under other business is, the Cascade Community Foundation is having their annual fundraiser event next month at, the Folding Warehouse. I have tickets, so if anyone would like to go and they don't want to purchase their own ticket, I have tickets to share, so let me know. I'll probably send an email out to remind everybody, and staff is welcome as well. It's gonna be a different thing. Usually they throw a gala, and this year it's going to be kind of a game show format, like based on the prices, right? So they're gonna have a Plinko wheel. Not really a Plinko wheel, but you get the gist. And so you'll have, you'll be able to participate in games and win a bunch of little prizes, and then there will be bigger prizes and a showcase showdown and everything. So it should be really fun.
And they're honoring like Shelley Irwin.
They are. There's
who's
5.
Personality and David and Karen Custer.
Yes.
People have been very engaged in the community. So there's going to be a lot of fun. And then there's some awesome people being honored.
And Scott was one of the people, his business. He and his wife and their business were honored last year at this event.
It's a fun event.
It is a
There's
fun
some
event.
Awesome people this year being honored.
Yeah. Very true. So I will follow up with an email to everyone so that you can let me know if you'd like to claim tickets, but please consider it.
I think it's a Wednesday, right?
It's a Saturday, I think, which is not awesome,
I
but
think it shifted off the Saturday.
did it shift off Saturday?
I think it's
November 15th.
it's a Wednesday, I think.
Oh, is it a Wednesday now?
We have a board meeting.
Oh,
Oh, we do.
come after the board meeting.
It's right across.
Still need a drink after
Right
that.
there. Yeah, they got a lot of people.
We do a
Hey, Bowling Warehouse.
No.
Quite the selection.
It's Wednesday, the 15th.
Wednesday, the 15th. My mistake.
We'll go crash it.
At 6.
Was,
We
it
will
was
crash
on
it.
a Saturday.
Was on a Saturday.
Correct, and it had to move. So
Saturday in fall is no bueno, but anyway, maybe that's why it changed. Next meeting is November 21st, but stick around because we have our informational meeting. Is there any other business? Yes.
Couple things. So I see Domino's, they open.
I don't think so.
I
They
don't
went
think
into
they
the old.
opened yet.
Okay.
What a,
Did you see all the cars parked in that Subaru parking lot with the Domino's?
Yes. Yeah, logo. So there's a Domino's that is going into the old,
Epriati's.
Used to be
oh,
Dunkin'
Yes.
Donuts.
okay.
The rotating.
Dunkin' Donuts,
the rotating.
rotating
Lot.
restaurant,
Yep.
yes.
Guess we'll find out if it's jinxed.
Yeah, I saw Caribou Coffee
That's.
is getting closer and closer. That's just amazing. 5 coffee shops.
Thinking the same.
Everyone needs coffee.
Scooters, Big B,
They're all busy.
Starbucks, yeah.
Culver says the best coffee though.
Thanks. I don't sell lots, that's why it's made fresh every
But
time.
don't.
Grinding the beat.
Just a follow-up, Heritage Days, did anybody go? And were we part of sponsor for that?
I know, but do you think there's potential to
I think
grow
there's-
it?
I think there's potential for more things to go on down here, because we did participate last Saturday in the trunk or treat.
Oh, at
They
the
did across at
DNW.
DNW.
How did that
My
go?
wife had gone to man the table, and she said they had a great turnout in all that rain.
I
Wow.
was gonna go, but I had to give the dogs baths and it was raining. It didn't happen, but it sounds like a great event.
You could have done both at the same
That's,
time.
yeah.
I know, you wanna go and
multitasking.
Walk
know.
through.
So come up and go to the
And
thing.
pet parade, all kinds of things, but I think there's opportunities for the community to do more fun
Yes.
things like that.
I agree.
And for the DDA to possibly help with some of those things. And then this may be members that are turning out at the end of this year. Do we know who those people are?
I mean, again, I updated
think
lists,
it's
but I
me.
do not know.
Okay.
So we'll say there's like people that, well, this isn't what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, a lot of people want to be on the committee.
Different, everything though, not DDA necessarily, but also-
Nobody wants a DDA.
yeah, DDA is a unique thing, but
Those are the things that I had on my list.
Other business? Anyone? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting then.
I make a move to adjourn the
I will
meeting.
second that.
All in favor?
That was quick.
Everyone.
But
All right.